You mentioned the importance of tier two, tier three cities, how they're coming to the fore, and it's not only going to be about Mumbai, Delhi, Bengaluru, Pune, but you're going
Yeah.
to see a whole new workforce. We're beginning to see that already. And that obviously means more multicultural teams spanning across state borders, country borders. Any insights into leading multicultural teams across state and country borders?
I think awareness, self-awareness, and also awareness of different cultures. I would call that cultural sensitivity becomes very important when you're leading teams that are global or cross-border, um, because there are varying communication styles, there are different work practices and approaches to um, everyday work problems, right? Um, so that becomes extremely key because otherwise, people in general, I think, what do we expect from our leaders? We expect respect, open communication, transparency, trust, guidance, etc., which will be there. But since it's virtual, it's hard to build some of these, the openness, the transparency, the respect. So I would suggest technology because you have some really cool tools where you can whiteboard together, where you can put your post-its and ideas and save documents in the same place. So video conferencing, etc., really helps bridge that gap to some extent, but also to be aware again, because if you notice certain cultures, certain countries, certain states are speaking more than the others, to be aware of that and say, hey, do you have something to add as well? To reach out to the silent ones. And I think a big part is the time zone, because I think it's been over 2.5 decades of working in global teams, right? And you realize that you're always doing late night calls. Is to be a little sensitive and say, we'll rotate the meeting to accommodate different locations. We will not place undue burden on one specific region or one specific country. To be sensitive about that, to also celebrate diverse perspectives, seek inputs from different people, different backgrounds, even small things like festivals, like, not schedule a meeting on Diwali or not schedule something when it's another festival from another country. But also, again, it's not just the onus is not just on the leader. The team also should be provided with resources, with trainings, with workshops, and there's some fantastic books and resources on how do you differ culturally, like you can map a nationality and you can say, okay, as an Indian, this is how I am, and as a German, this is how someone else is. Of course, these are stereotypes and many times very generalized. You could be very different due to upbringing, etc. Yeah, so I think successfully leading multicultural, multi-geographical teams, just teams across borders, requires more over communication at times, awareness, cultural sensitivity, adaptability, and just being sensitive that what you think or how you think something should work may not be how the other person sees it.
Mastermind, the women leaders special powered by Nucleus Office Parks, has CEOs, marketing heads, HR leads, group sales heads, corporate communication heads, CSR leaders, as well as strategy leads who are all ladies. And we're very proud to interview Aparna Rao, country head board member, CBS India, which is Cargill Business Services, for this week's edition. Okay, some lifestyle questions. What kind of music do you listen to? And any recent music concert or gig that you went to that you really enjoyed, Aparna?
So my go-to music is Coke Studio, Rishi. When I have to shut out all the noise around me and just center myself and introspect, or I'm just having a bad day, that's the place I go to. I truly like the lyrics, the energy, the uniqueness, the vibe, especially Sufi music. But otherwise, it also depends on my mood. I can go from Mohammad Rafi to Sonu Nigam to Mehdi Hassan ghazals to Nothing Else Matters by Metallica. It just depends on the mood.
What kind of books do you enjoy reading, Aparna? And what's a book read that you can suggest to us, to the audiences?
So this is my area. Being highly introverted, I find my solace in reading. It's my escape. I curl up with a book, and again, I find a way to shut myself and really enjoy what I'm reading and immerse myself in that. So I've got three huge physical bookshelves at home, and then of course Kindle and all of that. So I have hundreds of books. Um, The Courage to be Happy and The Courage to be Disliked. These are two books that I really enjoyed. And It's in conversation style. It's a very unique way of writing, and it really makes you introspect. I enjoy those very well.
Your professional growth story, one key ingredient, Aparna, that made you who you are professionally.
There's a quote that resonates very deeply with me that says, "The magic you're looking for is in the work that you're avoiding." And today it makes sense, but if I go back in the last 2.5 decades, right, there were always tasks that other people hesitated to do, projects they didn't want to venture into, and somehow it would come to me. And there were moments where
Wow.
I questioned myself, am I here only to continuously clean up other people's mess? But it all paid off. And I think my service oriented mindset, because I believe that you're here to in karma yoga, in seva, that sort of helped me because my focus was making life better for people around me, be it customers or partners or my teams. Am I simplifying things for them? Am I improving things for them? If not, it makes no sense.
Gender biases faced, if any, Aparna? I mean, generically speaking, we don't want to stir up any controversies here, you naming any organizations, but at a general level, please.
See, personally, I believe the world has made a lot of progress, right? Over the last few decades, there's more awareness, there's more sensitivity, but the challenges still persist. So, in a short answer, yes, I have faced gender biases, and I can probably give you two examples. One was as I was going on maternity, there was a male colleague, and this was how many, 17 years ago, who said something like, "You're going on vacation now, and we'll have to do your work." I was like, wow, how did they even expect that this was going to be vacation? And there was another comment, this time by a lady colleague. We were both on a panel. This was probably 18 years ago. Yeah, we were both on a panel where we're interviewing people, and she said, "Let's not consider this lady because she has a small child. The child will fall sick and she will take leaves." I know these sound very funny now, but I used to be very appalled by some of these comments, and I would like to believe there are fewer happening today. But I also see there's still an assumption that pregnant women, for example, cannot take on more responsibility. It's like their ambition has died. You don't even want to check with them if they're willing to take on a certain role. There's also a doubt if people will return effectively after maternity leave. And if you notice, the questions on work-life balance or how do you manage family is rarely directed at the opposite gender. It's usually women who. There's an expectation already
True.
set, and I don't blame the workplaces. See, workplaces are a reflection of the society we live in. So unless these changes happen at home, where there's equal opportunities, shared household duties, caregiving responsibilities, it automatically disproportionately falls on women, right? So if we want to see a change in workplace, which is happening, I'm glad, it'll be slow because it needs to first happen at home.
What is the distance women leaders need to cover to have equal presence in boardrooms? Like you said, yes, there's been a marked improvement, but I've spoken to each and every lady who's featured in Mastermind, and they pretty much had the same answer. They have this either a solitary lady or maybe two tops in the board of
Yes,
their companies.
yes.
How can we bridge this gap?
The distance women need to cover is from self-doubt to belief. One, to stop feeling like an imposter sitting in that boardroom, to feel like they deserve a seat at the table. And I'll be honest, I've been guilty of that as well. There have been times where you're the only women. And I remember my last conversation with my mentor. This was probably a year or year and a half ago, where I was like, I feel like a little girl, or I'm looked at like a little girl in the meetings, right? And she said, "Do you feel like a little girl? If not, then project that." Right? So the distance of not taking up space, sitting in a corner versus actually owning your space. There was this executive presence training in 2017, and the coach actually pointed this out and said, "Look at the way you're sitting versus the others at your table." And I was like, oh my God, yes, that's so true. The distance of being shy or marketing yourself, branding yourself a little more, the distance that women need to cover is also to stop aping or behaving like a man, but to be yourself, take pride in your femininity, to be authentic and vulnerable.
Are women leaders more effective than their male counterparts, or is it a myth?
Now you're trying to put me on a spot, and I have both back at work. See, effectiveness of leaders, I don't think is determined by gender. That's my personal opinion. I know there are a lot of gender studies. And why it's my personal opinion? Because leadership effectiveness is more complex than that. It has various factors, your individual skills and qualities, your experience, and of course, the context. Sometimes the context is very different in the way you come across. Now, each person is good at something and not good at something. But I think women in general have different hurdles to overcome, right? You have already biases, you have the weight of caregiving, expectations, and it shapes you a certain way. More resilience, I believe, because every time you give up, you feel like you're letting the whole gender down. And of course, there are also other traits like nurturing, being more nurturing and empathetic, which naturally come to women. I was reading this article that said women leaders who were leading countries did better during the pandemic. And there was a list of countries, all of that. At the same time, you have also studies that show that men are more decisive, more ambitious, more driven. So it's sort of like a balance. But again, these are generalizing stereotypes. You can have extremely empathetic men. You can have very decisive and ambitious or very commanding women as well. And I've had the experience of having great leaders who are men, great leaders who are women, and terrible leaders who are both, honestly. So I think as long as the leader is willing to listen, bring a diverse range of perspectives, and sort of collaborates to enhance decision making, I think we're good. And at the end of the day, leadership is effective if you're able to inspire other people, if you're able to show a vision and communicate that vision to adapt and drive those outcomes, regardless of gender. I think effectiveness will be measured by those.
Well, Mastermind, the Women Leaders Special powered by Nucleus Office Parks, clearly proves that there's never been a better time than now for gender diversity and inclusion in India. And ladies in India Inc., like Aparna Rao, country head and board member, CBS India, Cargill Business Services, is really at the forefront of this change and movement. I think a nice way to bring the curtain down on this particular edition is you answering a question or your feelings on how men and women can complement each other at work for a most productive outcome.
I think the short answer is accept each other. We spend a lot of time trying to change the other person, whether it's in your personal life or at work, right? And not just men or women. Today we have a lot more trans people at work, or non-binary or gender fluid people. I think just accepting and letting people be, because working with different or with people who are different to you is where the learning happens. The most growth happens where there's the most discomfort, right? And we're all stronger together because each of us bring something unique to the table. So being patient with each other and trying to understand each other is where everyone benefits. Again, I was reading this term called gender intelligence, and what that means is a heightened awareness of the experiences and obstacles of what other genders go through. That leads to more appreciation, increased curiosities, and more productive and personal engagement in conversations on gender equity and better team engagement. So I think as we try and be more tolerant, more accepting, more understanding of each other, we become better people, and it becomes more important. It becomes easier to stay together, to learn together, and that'll be good for the company if we can look beyond gender stereotypes. Better future, not just for the company, but for all of us as well, for a better world.
Aparna, thank you for a fascinating conversation. Really, you being on Mastermind has been delightful. All your insights, your suggestions, and of course, your living examples of how you're leading your professional life. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Hrishi. Pleasure was all mine. Thanks for having me on the show.
94.3 Radio 1.